Good afternoon, everybody. There's plenty of seats. Come on in, take a seat. I feel like this place, we're always blocking doors, but if you're comfortable standing, good. Physical activity never hurts. I'm Wendy Nelson, and I'm from the National Institute of Health. I'm from the Office of Behavioral and Social Sciences Research. My boss, Bob Kaplan, will be joining us in a moment. I think he's just finishing up downstairs. So welcome to the afternoon session. Now, this session is slated to be inordinately long, and it doesn't need to be, but really what it needs to be is a conversation. So what I'd like to do is to take just a couple of minutes and walk you through where we are in thinking about public-private partnerships in mobile health, kind of the work we have done thus far, and where with all of you, where we'd like to go. So, clicker. Oh, I got a clicker. All right, I'm clicking. I'm not getting anything. Oh, I am. Oh, good. Okay. Oh, then now I got to go back. Okay. So I just wanted to, we've been at the mHealth Summit. I have seen more definitions of mobile health. I know that there are, and I think the definition isn't important, except for what I want people to think about is we're really hoping to create an inclusive ecosystem, not a restrictive one. And I think we all know that what's mobile and what's wireless today will be, we will have a different space in a year or two or three. But so I just wanted to say we think about it in many ways, but not just in phones. We think about it in all these ways. Many of you just saw Dr. Collins talk about mobile health, some of the devices that NIH has funded and looked at. Obviously, it's all sorts of things that we can do, and I think we're only limited by our imagination. We have this whole continuum. And as you heard, at NIH, we're really interested in how do we create a research base, an evidence base that will optimize this. And so I think that, this is a whole range of opportunities. I think the opportunities are really unlimited here at this point. Dr. Bob Kaplan, who's the director of our office and who's working really hard on this initiative. So, and I think the other reason that we all started thinking about public-private partnerships is this diagram that's from my friend Al Shar at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And there's a great hype, but we really want to make sure that we do the work that gets us so we don't go down to the trough of disillusionment. So I think if we all work together, I think the idea of partnerships is if we all work together, we can really reach that plateau of productivity in a way that makes more sense. This is the slide that my colleague Bill Riley at NIH has developed. And, one of the things we think about is, here he says, if I was lucky, I got a grant in 2005, that's good. Good job, right? 2006, 2007, I'm developing it, I'm pilot testing, I'm getting it out there, right? 2008, 2009, I'm recruiting, I'm randomizing. This is really good, right? I'm right on track, everybody's happy. 2010, I do my follow-ups. 2011, I analyze and I publish, and that's really flying in the science world, right? But think about technology. What happened in that time? YouTube. We missed that. Sorry, because you did your protocol. You were funded. There was no YouTube. What about the iPhone? Oops, that's a whole other area, right? Android, you get it, iPad. So what we have is this technology that's flying. And we have a science that we need to think about how do we keep pace? How do we do the science that we all want to do? And I think that's a cross-sector that we want, that evidence base. But how do we make things work faster? And working together, I think we can. So that leads us to the meat of this conversation. We've been working with FDA and with CMS for the last, it's 8 months now, on developing a public-private partnership. We've been out in the community, we've been talking to people, we've been trying to think about how's the best way to do this. And as Dr. Collins said, we really want it to be an inclusive space. We want it to include all of the major players in the mobile ecosystem, which is the theme of this conference. But if you think about it, often it's not the traditional players in health, and that's good. And it is some of the traditional players, but it's also patient, it's also advocacy groups, it's also associations. There's a lot of really important things, so we really wanted to bring them all together. And our theme, our bullet point, is a learning ecosystem. And I can thank our colleague Ida Sim, who's sitting up front here, for coming up with that idea. So what we really want to do is to have mHealth develop as a system that learns from itself, that it continues to improve, and has a constant evaluation system built in. And that's the joy that we hope can happen. So let me just kind of give you a background on how we got to where we are today. In April of 2012, so 8 months ago, well, actually, so we've started much before that, but in April, we had a meeting at the NIH campus, and we invited our colleagues from industry, from regulatory, we had FDA and FCC there. In standards, we had NIST, other science organizations, DOD, as well as a host of people who are building the devices and some selected academics. And we brought them together and we said, what kind of things do you want to do? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to have a public-private partnership? Is that something that would be valuable? I mean, we don't need something that the world said isn't useful. So that was the first question we had from everybody. Would it be useful? By the way, that was a resounding yes, was the response to that. And then we said, what kind of things did you want to work on? So some of the initial topics in that first meeting were, how do we translate? How do we translate what's happening? How do we translate science to industry and industry to science? How do we get them talking? How do we create virtual spaces where they can interact? How do we can do incubators that are not just creating industries, but how do we create incubators that move science and industry into a way that they can work together and bring their strengths, each bring their strengths? They also talked about getting ready for mHealth, and it was an interest in education in the traditional sense, but also there was really an interest in outreach, talking to the patient community, which are actually people most of the time, but really talking to consumers and saying, really outreach for them. How do you think about this? The provider community, the IT community, and even the policy community. So if we came together, is that something we could work on? And then standards. It's not your traditional just interoperability standards, which FDA is really, that's one of their crucial missions. But also, how do we get data? That there are standards for the data, that things can talk to each other. FDA has recently undertook initiative on interoperability, because the wired world is trying to figure out how to talk to each other, and I think the wireless world is very wise to be thinking about this now. How do we start by talking together instead of waiting until the end? So after that meeting, we came together, since it was unanimous that we should continue going, we created a steering committee. And what we tried to do was to get representation from many of the advocacy groups, or many of the potential partners here. So you can see there's a list. It was a large group. It was an active group. It was is an incorrect word. Is better. Whereas we meet every month. We have documents going around all the time. We're really trying to think about what are the things we need to get launched. And as you can see, they represent many, many different sectors. And so one of the things our group decided was, how about a request for information? That's an opportunity we have in the government. We can publish a request, we can send it out, and we can ask you all, what do you think? What's important? What are the questions you have? What are the things? And so we sent it out, and I must say I was flabbergasted at the responses. Many of the responses are 30 and 40 pages long, very involved, very, very interesting, thoughtful, wonderful responses, but we had over 100. And it was pages upon pages, and I'm still working my way through. But really what they all said was, this is fabulous. We all come to the mHealth Summit to break down some of the silos, and they said, if there's any way we can all work together, that would be great. So the need for evidence was high regardless. It didn't matter if you were coming from industry or academia. Everybody said one of the big themes was, how do we work together to build that evidence base? So I just want to switch now to the goals of the PPP. This is what the steering committee has come up with. and really kind of think about this. If you were up in Dr. Collins' talk, you saw these goals. As you can see, we really are interested in a learning ecosystem from the science perspective, but there's benefits to the whole community to having a continuous improvement process. So we really want to create this infrastructure. How do we do this that we can promote robust, evaluation as we go, and really, which will encourage discovery, which will encourage development, really kind of help the whole. Can we support education and integration? We know there are efforts in this area. One of the things we learned in meeting was that nobody knew what everybody else was doing. So it was kind of an amazing thing because somebody would say, oh, did you know there was a training? Somebody just did this great training on something. And we all went, oh no, I didn't know that was happening. So it isn't always about creating something. It's often making a space just so that we can pool information. So if there's something, ONC did something wonderful, HRSA did something wonderful, that we can all then share in that versus recreating it again and again, which is exactly what we don't want to do. Promoting research results. Many of you saw Dr. Collins talking about clinicaltrial.gov. There's an interest in that in the global community too. How do we think about a registry? There's been a real interest in a registry because you all don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. There's things being funded all over, and it would be really nice to be able to learn from each other because that's what science does. And then just to create this robust space. USAID is creating an evidence commons, an mHealth evidence commons. But, it'd be nice to be able to feed into that by creating an ecosystem that's constantly thinking about how do we generate evidence. So today, what we wanted to do, is generally, I field lots of phone calls, lots of emails about what do we need to do, what do we need to think about in a public-private partnership, what are your goals for it, what kind of things do you think would be important, and we thought that this summit would be a perfect opportunity to really come together and say, what do you all think, in a forum where we can talk together. And so really that's what I'd like to spend the rest of today doing, is thinking about, when you think about the goals that we've laid out, do these goals make sense? I think we could really start with, are these goals that make sense? And then what would be some of the specific steps that we could take within these goals that would make it an interesting and rewarding experience for wherever you are. So with that, I'm going to open it, because you guys have been talked to enough for 3 days. So can we use the microphone so that everybody can hear, though? Oh, and please introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Anna Ventuniak. I'm at the Center for HIV Educational Studies and Training in New York. It's part of Hunter College. My question doesn't directly speak to your goals, but it's more around funding. So how are you getting the funding to build this infrastructure? I imagine you need a ton of it. And just speaking, I'm a researcher, so speaking from my personal experience, I submitted an application 3 times, something that incorporated a mobile platform, and was not funded. Yet I recently worked on a grant application that involved 7 sessions of individual and group-based counseling that was ranked as first in a recent review cycle. And so when we're trying to push sort of this work that's very important, how do we get funding?
Okay. So congratulations on being ranked first. We're going to talk today about the partnership. And the partnership should not do anything we can do individually. So NIH isn't going to create devices. FDA isn't going to do funding. So I think I'm going to table questions about how do we fund grants, how do we think about that, because that's a mechanism we have. And we will be we'll be doing a webinar either later this month or early next year on mHealth funding. I know it's an important topic, but that's something NIH can do on their own, and that's something we do and we're working on. So I think that's a question that isn't a partnership question. It's an important question, but it isn't a partnership question. So I really want to think about what can't we do alone? George.
Hi, I'm George Benza from the Dartmouth Psychiatric Research Center. So I'm especially interested in partnerships between academia and the private sector, and I think that we're all discovering that we need to diversify our funding resources, and this looks like a great bridging, at the very least a bridging infrastructure to do that. But is the idea that we would create wings within the private sector companies that are devoted to development of research endeavors in certain areas that will be informed by the researchers? How are you thinking about the nuts and bolts of the private-public funding or project endeavor?
Okay, so I think it's a great question, and the one thing I want to say is we wouldn't be meeting here today in this way had we worked it all through already. Had we launched our partnership, had we had a full charter. We've been working this through with partners, but these are all really important questions. So I think one of the things that we have been talked to time and time again is how do we set up an ecosystem where our colleagues who are developing technology in the private sector can work with our research community. And I think that's been a topic all the way from the start, and it's something we've heard again and again, and we're willing to really think, that seems to me to be something a partnership can do, is really build those bridges between different disciplines, different projects. So that will be one of the goals of the partnership. But how are we going to exactly do this? It wouldn't be a partnership if I said this is what I think we should do right now.
So you're open to suggestions?
I'm totally up to suggestions, as are all my colleagues that are working on this.
Hi, I'm Sharon Paciani with the DoD healthcare system, obviously, and I work in health budgets and financial policy. I'm a nurse, so let me put on those green shades for just a second. One of the things which I would love to suggest in all this is that there's been, and appropriately so, a big focus on the quality and making sure the robust clinical trials that has the outcome, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the other things that I think is missing that needs to be integrated, because it is the way the future, is the cost effectiveness of what we're doing. And especially as the budget's cut and our health care bill increases and with that ACA coming in, the cost effectiveness needs to be integrated with this. I'm not saying it's more of a priority, but please address that if you can, because I think that that's where a lot of people get stuck. They have great ideas, but they can't get it out because nobody pays for it. But return on investment. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Wendy, for the presentation and the forum. My name is Steve Erd. I'm from Phillips, and I think the group you've got together has done great work. And if you haven't read our submission yet, I encourage you to move it to the top. Phillips is really excited about the way the public-private partnership and some of the comments earlier around academics and industry working together. We've had a lot of success there. I just wanted to offer some feedback on the first bullet, and I think that hits two things I think are really important. One, we have things already in production in the field that could really benefit from the kind of clinical evaluation study and research that you're talking about. And the other is, if we look forward to something like the M-band, the Mobile Body Area Network, this is a great opportunity. And I think this group has the opportunity to really shape what visions of what that might look like to encourage further innovation.
Okay. Does everybody know what the M-band is? Okay. Would you want to? You probably can do a much better job than I can.
I'll try to keep it brief and at my technical level. So the FCC voted a few months ago to open up some bandwidth dedicated to the Mobile Body Area Network. And in our view, this would give us the opportunity. Today we track patients in the hospital setting. We can track them at home. But when they leave the home or the hospital setting, we really lose track of them. So to the extent we need to track patients while they go to the grocery store or to the restaurant or to a friend or family's house, neighbor's house, we can have that constant communication, that feedback for whatever it is that the clinicians want to monitor. Whether it's and chronic is probably a common case, but the M-band is a dedicated effort of bandwidth to help facilitate that need.
Great, thank you. I mean, one of the things I think we started in this idea of the partnership was so we could learn to talk together. We all have our acronyms. We all have all things we worry about in our space, and that we really need to think about together. So, thank you.
Kathleen Charters with the Department of Defense. I work for the TRICARE Management Activity, which is our umbrella over all the Department of Defense healthcare systems. Two questions. The first, you had a bullet up there about solicit input on content areas. So what are those content areas? Is that from the slide that you have with the goals? Is that what you're talking about, or is it something else?
You mean for this meeting?
Well, when you said solicit input on content areas, what were the content areas that you wanted input on?
Oops. I think that was in our request for information, and we were saying were there areas that people thought were critical, like the MBAN, were there areas that were specific to the content areas that people thought were really important, so.
All right, so that's going to come out from the comments that you received as to what was identified?
And we will put out a summary document kind of talking about the many there were really amazing comments to this, so.
Okay, and then the second question is around the moving forward with, if we know that we want to have a partnership, how do people know who's out there to partner with, which gets back to the idea of some kind of conceptually clearinghouse of, hi, I'm developing XYZ type of application. Is there a researcher interested in evaluating that? Mm-hmm. Or I'm an XYZ researcher looking for people with these types of devices or services, whatever it is. I mean, it gets back to the fundamental question of how do we know with whom to connect?
I think this is a great question, and this has come up, this comes up all the time. Barbara, did you want to say something? Barbara Middleman from...
Yeah, I'm Barbara Middleman, and I work with partnerships at NIH. The questions that people are asking are kind of both chicken and egg questions, and a lot of this is about where do you start. And if you've started, then you know where to go next, but you don't have to figure out what is the first step. So the first step that we've been engaged with is first figuring out, do people feel like there's a need to work together? That, as Wendy said before, is, yeah, everybody realizes that they have a very tiny slice of the picture or a very small view, and there's a whole lot out there that they're missing, and that if we could all see more, then we would know better. So the first proposition of should we work together seems to be one, yeah, we've all agreed we should work together. So then the next question is, well, what is that going to look like, and what's the how? And what's the purpose of it, and what can we do? And that's going to be a little bit emergent. And that's the good news and the bad news. So we're all a little anxious about things that are emergent because they're not really fixed, and you can't say, okay, well, I do like this or I don't like that. But if we come together and have this conversation, then we can say, okay, well, here's 15 things we think are important. We don't all think those 15 things are important, but a subset of us like A, and we're going to go off and work on A, and another subset like B, and we're going to go off and work on B. But if we can set ground rules where we can all work together under this same rubric, then we're going to make sure that the public good is served rather than the good of one partner to the detriment of all the others. That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be a partnership. We would have rules where we understand how we're going to disseminate the effects of what we generate. Who's going to get access to it? What kinds of uses can they put it to? So part of this is going to be about figuring out what those ground rules look like. We're thinking this is going to be a big umbrella, and a lot of different things can happen. And you guys are going to self-aggregate, in a sense, and figure out, the 5 of us want to work on this, and it doesn't really get in the way of the ground rules, so that's okay. And we're going to go off and do that. And another 5 of us want to go and do something else, and that will happen also. So part of what we want from you in this is to know, well, what is it you think is important? What do you think those ground rules need to be? What would be a deal breaker? You can't be in a partnership if this happens. Or in order to be in a partnership, it must be like this. So tell us what those kinds of deal breakers, both on the positive and the negative side, are. And who is it you think should be included? So we started the conversation with the people we knew about, and then they told other people, and more people came in, and other people have since found out about it. And Wendy said at the beginning, we want this to be inclusive. So we're surely missing some people even still. So hopefully you and the conversations you have will propagate it out even further. Some people will choose not to participate. That's their prerogative. Some people will think this is a great way to get done what they want to get done that they can't get done otherwise. That's good. So, we're going to co-create this. And and we're going to stay uncomfortable about it, but only in the best of ways.
Thank you. Sure. There we go. There they are. The list was people in the steering committee. So these are this is actually the generic categories. So I think that Barb will help us create a framework here. So.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Wilson, and I head business development for a small company called Actigraph Corp., and we make activity measurement devices. Previously, I was an investment banker and ran a couple of global healthcare corporate finance businesses, including the venture capital marketing business in healthcare technology for both of those large financial institutions. So I think my input is as follows. This collaboration is critical. Academics don't necessarily think like business people, and historically, the bridge to that has been the financial community, the venture people that are willing to invest the dollars to advance an academic idea into a business proposition. And so to do that, you have to have collaboration. The interesting thing is that the academic path that we're on, one where funding is constrained and people are looking for more valuable ways to move something from an idea into business, there is a framework there for you all to take advantage of in this study. So my advice would be on the collaborative committee. If you just think about it and conceptually it's too big, find a target, find a specific thing to do. You have a need from a patient to address cardiovascular disease. You have drug companies and device companies that serve that patient and make money. They're part of the dialogue. The patient's the dialogue. The business is the dialogue. Guess what? There's already a system in place for clinical trials. There's already within NIH clinical trial centers with major universities. Find the university. Is it Harvard? Is it Vanderbilt? Is it Stanford? Is it Duke? Find someone who has the specific expertise at the academic level to link to what that outcome should be. And then you have vendors, someone like an Actigraph or a Philips or a Qualcomm that has a technical tool that could assist in getting more accurate information that would support evidenced outcome, real evidence that the tool generates the evidence towards a very specific outcome. And the partnership is that you have the academic wins because their research is being re-supported. The business wins because they have a case where they now can feel like they're not at risk for some unusual clinical endpoint that they can never hope to get. The vendor wins because they're supplying a solution to create a result that makes money. The patient wins because through that clinical trial process, if you can avail yourself of a mobile technology, a sensor technology, you can kill the trial faster if it's not working. You can save the patient's safety if the intervention is not right. And so I think Dr. Collins is right. Let's get rid of the hype and let's look at these very specific tools and let's pick a target that we can go after and design very randomized clinical trials around a target. And it could be cardiovascular, it could be diabetes, it could be any number of things where these tools would be very useful. And then get the people who are most vested in that, the right academic, the right business, the right financer, the right patient advocacy group, in that collaborative agreement and get a few wins. Just get one or two wins.
Thank you. So, I mean, there seems to be a consensus that building those bridges is critical. So
Hi.
I'm going to let you go behind because you've been in a longer line, and then we'll go back and forth.
Hi, I'm Jessica Roch. I'm with the University of Michigan. I'm currently getting my master's in public health there, looking at the intersection between private sector and public health, so this is very exciting. One of the tools I think that might be useful would be perhaps looking at sort of a toolbox that could be business models, kind of looking at this idea of can you monetize health outcomes. So when a researcher is building their study and they're thinking, how do I get this to really scale out, how can you have that conversation? I think maybe leveraging from some of the experts of, the expertise of industry. So Pfizer, what are they looking at when they're looking at increasing drug adherence? And how, is there a business model sort of structure or template that could be provided? Alternatively, looking at regulatory issues, so entrepreneurs that are looking to enter into this space that are just kind of overwhelmed with where all these regulatory things, is there sort of a toolbox where they could go to and download sort of templates and then connect with other people to have questions? So I think that would be something tangible.
Great. Okay.
I'm Zorina Gallus from NIH as well. I didn't see there specifically mentioned, and I wanted to make sure that that doesn't fall off the list, that category, because I heard several times during the conference the idea that we could do healthcare without the physicians. And I think that it's very important to have physicians, nurses, healthcare providers, not necessarily academic, but just practicing physicians and people on board, because I think if we try to do this without them, then it's just not going to work. So I think the most important thing is to make them more efficient, more precise, so forth. So let's not forget that, in the spirit of partnerships.
Right?
Yeah.
Ida's going, what do you mean we've been removed? Because Ida's on the steering committee and she's a physician. I think they were members of nonprofit organizations. I mean,
But can you see? I mean, aren't they? I think they should be at the top of your list.
So we're not.
So I didn't meet any physicians in this conference, and I heard several times people saying we are going to do it. Yeah. I didn't meet, but I heard several speakers saying we are going to do diagnosis, we are going to replace physicians, and I think that's the wrong spirit. The spirit is no. You need to integrate physicians and make them more efficient and so forth. That's all. Just one thing.
That was an oversight. Yeah?
Hey, Wendy.
Hey.
Thanks so much for doing this. I'm Yael Harris with HRSA, and I've worked with Wendy for a while. We're really supportive of this kind of integration. And what I wanted to infuse here is that there's a bunch of federal stakeholders across the federal government. Some of you are in the room. We get together regularly. We can't open to the public, or I'll be fired, and you don't want that to happen. But we try to talk about what's going on and hear what innovations are in the field. But really, what I'd like to see the work group moving towards is what are some of the roles that government can play. And I don't mean what are more grant opportunities. I don't need to say anything. You read the newspaper. That's above my pay grade, basically. But what is a role that the government can play to help push forward the mHealth agenda? What information can we work with you so that if there's a barrier that we're addressing, we can come back and say, this is what we need from the industry to help make the case for why we should push mHealth forward. So really helping us to identify the role of the private sector and the role of the federal government so that we can work mutually supportively together. Thanks, Wendy.
Great. And I think as a government, I think Yael knows, we cannot take advice, but we can certainly take information, and that's the joy of a partnership, to get to questions like that.
This is, I'm Willow Pequenot, I'm at NIH, and this is really a nuts and bolts comment on things. But whenever there's any kind of call for grants or applications of any kind, there's always a list of program officers. Those are the people who wrote that call. They have a very vested interest. So if you call them, they'll find people for you to work with. They know who's doing good work. They know whose hit rate in getting funding is very good. And we've built a lot of, I'm in AIDS, we've built a lot of partnerships that way by hooking somebody in a developing country or in a company with somebody who's doing good work. The other thing is we have two mechanisms that really serve this purpose. And Congress set aside money for what they call small business innovative research. Now that's for small groups. Then there's one, what is it? Help me here. STD. Right. Which is for larger. And this is especially formulated to create private-public or government-private partnerships. So keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Byer, and first of all, I want to thank the whole NIH network for continually putting great conferences that anybody can attend on all different topics out there, and they're so rewarding. And appreciate you for this dialogue. I feel bad for you because I've been educated by these conferences. I work for a company called M3 that's a solution for mental health. It was published in the Annals of Family Medicine, adopted by the AAFP, and we've tried to work with the NIH group for this effort you have for the public EMR, for an electronic medical record that all citizens can access. And the conversation we'd like to have is to understand where the public domain fits in. We're not pharma-sponsored, we're privately funded, we've never taken an NIH nickel, and at the same time, we have an innovation which furthers just the PHQ-9 depression dialogue. And we said, oh, go stick it into your citizens' EMR. We make it available for free to people every night all across the country. And the response came back is, well, we really can't do that because when you get to the clinical level, you have a reimbursement code and you're part of the healthcare system. So the reality is the reimbursement codes are part of the healthcare system, and as we go from pay for performance or into pay for performance, there's still half the country's is pay for service. So we'd like some guidance on how we can contribute, but not feel because we're not the best form filler, we don't want to put it in the public domain, that we can't be left, that we'd be left on the side.
Great. I think these are great questions, or great points, so I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Again, as Barbara said.
It was the dialogue. I was looking for direction.
Sorry. I don't know the project, and I mean, the point of today is really have the dialogue. But I think these are great. I mean, I think that's a clarity that Yale Albert just brought up, too. So, yeah. Yeah, and I think that is the point of this, is what we're asking you to do today is to help shape. And as we start developing, as this actually launches, being a part of it, so that you can form it and help it make shape. And I think you're next.
Thank you. My name is Lee Kim. I'm an attorney with Tucker Arnsberg, and I'm also active on our legal policy task force. Excuse me, I didn't mean to be quite that loud. But in any event, one of my questions, being a patent attorney, healthcare technology attorney, is is your partnership already looking at intellectual property issues where people might hold patents that might block innovation before people want to develop in that space?
Right. So IP has been, it's a huge issue. And I think the thing that makes a public-private partnership easy from our point of view is we're the government, and it has to be in the best interest of the public. So that's the rule. That's what's driving everything we're talking about in our steering committee and everything. We don't have an answer yet on IP because we realize that the IP is a very, very complicated thing. And if you'd like to shoot me an email and give me some information from your perspective, I would really like that. It's complicated. We know it's not easy. I mean, what we're looking for, too, is what people think are deal breakers in this area, because these are very, very complicated areas, and we're all in health, not law. Barbara, do you want to make a comment?
Some advantages and some disadvantages about being far from the microphone. A lot of times the partnerships we do tend to be in the pre-competitive space, which is intended not to make intellectual property and intended to generate public resources. And when we do that, it's relatively easy. Everybody coming in knows those are the IP rules. Everybody's background IP is protected. You own it when you come in. You contributed in whatever way to the activities of the partnership, but you continue to own it. Sometimes that's not the best way to do things. Sometimes we need to work in the competitive space. And when we're working in the competitive space, especially in such a technology-heavy, IP-heavy field such as this, the rules are going to have to be worked out. This is something that we are open to. Our end game here, though, as government, as Wendy said, is it's got to be in the best interest of the public health. And that's the deal breaker. If it's not in the best interest of the public health, we can't participate. And that's going to be true of all the federal agencies. And so if it's a partnership that involves the federal agencies, the IP rules that we come up with collectively are going to have that as the fail-safe. And so there's a lot of, the devil's going to be in the details here. That's one of these emergent things. But the end game is always the same. How we get to that end game, there's room for negotiation. Does that help? Does that answer your question? We spend a lot of time in the pre-competitive space. I'm doubting that this partnership is going to be able to stay pre-competitive and to be functional. So we're going to have to work it out.
You're taller than the mic is right now. Thank you.
So my name is Ravi Ramchandra. I'm from Ethics Pharmaceuticals, and I was asked to repeat the joke. We are the black sheep of this conference, apparently. You don't hear too many pharma companies out there. But one of the things I wanted to make a comment and also speak a few words about it. How do we join this public-private partnership? It wasn't very clear to me. And then the second thing is about, since I'm naive and I work for a pharmaceutical company, we didn't wait for this PPP, which we weren't aware of, to start up. So I went ahead and started my own 501c3 public-private partnership with patient advocacy groups, lots of other pharma companies, academics, 26 academics from around the world, on neurodegenerative disease. And we're currently running a study with over 100 patients. It's into its 32nd week of a 52-week study. We'd love to share what we've learned with your PPP, because we've learned a lot of things through the way into the 32 weeks. And the other comment I'll make is, as wearing my other hat as the guy who runs Connected Health or mHealth studies for pharma company, I'm running about 8 clinical trials this year, which would pretty much double Dr. Kaplan's meta-analyses of randomized clinical trials over the years. And this is across various disease areas. And while I can't speak to the specifics as a pharma company representative, but as a 501c3 guy, I'll be happy to share that information. So is there a mechanism for us to work together?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And how do you join? Again, as Barbara said, sometimes it's being uncomfortable in the uncertainty. We are working on finalizing the document, our charter, working with our steering committee, and at that point we'll be working with the managing partner who will then put this together. We will launch, and then we will let you all know, absolutely, that there is an opportunity to join at that point. So.
Hi, I'm Dr. Flora Winston, and I'm not sure who mentioned it before, but I'm one of the doctors who's here. Hi.
There's a lot of doctors here.
Yeah, there are several of us here. I'm also an engineer. And, I'm thrilled with seeing the progress you've made, Wendy and Bob, in the last year. I mean, it's really a rapidly moving field, and trying to insert evidence and all of that. It's great, and thanks for the Institute over the weekend. So I agree that I don't, some of the people I don't see on this group, it might be in the and others part at the end, is the payers, this self-insured companies who ultimately are the ones who really push for what gets into insurance and what doesn't get into insurance. They're the ones who are really driving healthcare as it moves forward, and in particular are very interested in prevention. I work with companies like that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is this program, which you may or may not know about, that's at the National Science Foundation. That's the Industry University Cooperative Research Centers. I have one for the last 7 years that's in injury. And one of the things with the public-private partnership, I think that there might be better work, government working with private sector, but there's a whole other part, which is universities working with the private sector. I mean, that often can be very, very contentious. And the more that we can think about how, particularly if there are situations where can the person publish and when can they, I mean, there's just all these issues, and if IP does come out of it, what happens to it, I think that would be helpful. But what actually works really well with our IUCRC, we have 21 members now, and all the competitors get together twice a year to fund a research portfolio, is that it's all pre-competitive stuff. So it's like in my field, because we started with a real crisis, which was kids dying from airbags, and then moved on by thinking about what do we need to know so that that's not going to happen again. And so, it's really been great. We've been giving, sort of the fuel for the industry, or at least one of the fuels for the industry. And I think that can be very helpful if people are buying in, because they have a common problem that no one company wants to spend their resources in addressing. And I hope that's what you're actually approaching, because that makes it a little easier for everybody to work together.
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Great job.
We're trying to solve problems that we can't solve on our own.
Great. Any way that I can help, I'm happy to. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Tom?
Hi, Tom Martin. I'm the manager of mHealth, so I'm also a doctoral student at the University of Delaware. And I come at this from a couple different perspectives, and there's three main points that I really want to make that we made in our formal written comments, and I think we're starting to talk about that here, is what's best for the public. So one, research leading to academic knowledge and understanding. Two, Steve brought up the point earlier today about industry. So research that leads to industry understanding, innovation, all of that. And then three, a framework of the intellectual property dealing with pre-competitive space. So those were our three main areas that we sort of said, listen, let's try to build a framework around this. So I'm happy for people to try to pick that apart, and if there's something missing there, by all means, go ahead and add it. But I think those three main areas are sort of what we're starting to talk about, and we just sort of need to try and fill in what's missing in the big bucket, and then what goes into the little buckets. So.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's that learning ecosystem if we get those pieces. So.
Hi, I'm Richard Garfield from the University of California, San Diego. And I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist by training, and because I work on diseases that don't have vaccines to prevent them yet, I got dragged kicking and screaming into the behavioral health and behavioral intervention field. And now I'm transitioning into mobile device technology for medication adherence, which is very exciting. But what I'm finding now with actually working with private industry and at the same time trying to do good research is that there's a little bit of a tension there between a company that has an investment and they want to get their technology out there and start making money off of it quickly, and the need for good science to make sure that we're using evidence base for putting these things out there. And I know that the FDA has recently drawn a line to decide what is considered a medical device, and they have rules for conducting the trials to make sure that we have the evidence. But there's also a gray zone out there for other devices that are used for sharing information but not necessarily making diagnoses, and these aren't covered yet by the FDA. I kind of like that because it gives us a lot more flexibility, but I think this partnership could be very useful in coming up with some rules or guidelines, whether it's coming up with some standards by which health providers could say, this device has enough research on it that I can feel comfortable using it. Not necessarily that it's FDA approved yet, but that there's some sort of guidance to say we have enough research versus we don't. And I think that would help to resolve some of the tension that the researchers are having with the business, because the researchers just can say we don't have enough evidence yet based on these standards. And so that we won't get pressured as much to try and put our stuff out there as quickly. So
Great. Okay. I think it's a great idea.
Hi, Wendy. David Collins, Senior Director of mHealth. Work with Pat Wise and Tom Martin. Just had a general comment about the mHealth Summit in terms of my observations here. I think this is very important, and I think the bigger picture is innovation. And I'm probably stating the obvious, but mobile health is one spoke in the wheel. I've met a lot of people here, very different, very diverse in terms of people who don't necessarily come from the healthcare background. They come from other industries. They are looking for a resource, for some guidance, for some for some networking. As an example, I mentioned the new HIMSS Innovation Community. How do I join? They really want to tune in and get that support as they're developing their products. And they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait. It's very competitive, as you know, and they want the resources and guidance yesterday. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up points that are driving where we kind of how we started and where we're going. Is how do you build relationships that can make things happen in a more rapid way? Like the last speaker just said, there's those tensions, but somehow we have to figure out a way to work together to resolve them and keep innovation high. So I think Bob would like to make some comments for a few minutes.
Well, let me make some general comments. Should I come up there or you want me to? Yeah. So. is why. I've been back here taking lots of notes. First of all, thank you all for participating. It's been a lot of fun to listen to this, and that it stimulates a lot of different thoughts. But maybe I can boil it down to one observation that I keep coming back to, and that is that one of the exciting parts of this is that we represent different cultures. And I think many of you are probably aware that I came to the NIH from the academic world relatively recently. So I've been in government less than 2 years. And it's been quite a shift for me. I thought I really understood government from the outside, but it's quite different from the inside. In addition to that, learning about the different players in the mHealth space has been really fascinating. And almost all of the comments that I heard over the last hour or so get at this. So I'd like to just highlight a couple of these cultural differences and then talk about how one of the functions of the PPP might be to help us understand one another and what the pressures are. So I think Richard Garfin's comment was actually quite good, that the tension between being in academia, actually an institution that I used to be at, and in a town where there's a lot of innovation in the private sector, highlights some of this. So let me just begin by saying the tension between the way we do things in the research world and this need to innovate and move things quickly. So Dr. Collins' talk today touched on this issue. What he was suggesting is that we need to evaluate the health benefits of mHealth technologies very much like we evaluate drugs or devices. And that in the NIH and a lot of the academic communities, they're very hung up on very traditional ways of evaluating things, like randomized clinical trials. And I know that a lot of you have concerns about that. As Wendy pointed out, randomized clinical trials take a long time. What we deal with in our culture is the disbelief, I shouldn't say disbelief, the inability to accept results that don't come out of that research methodology. I know all of you probably have stories about this, but it's particularly strong, and it's one of the areas where there's particular tension between the innovators in the industry side and the academic and government side. So it might be worthwhile for this group to explore how to get at that. And I want to just take this one step further. Dr. Collins mentioned the desire to list trials in clinicaltrials.gov. Well, why would he want to do that? Well, it turns out that registration of trials is now required by the FDA for drugs and devices. And so it has had a remarkable impact in the way things are reported, and actually has changed the number of positive results that have come out in the research literature. So before registration was required in 1997, an investigator could do a study and they could use multiple outcome measures. So they could randomize people to a treatment or control group and they could measure 30 or 40 things. Then what they had the opportunity to do was to report the one or two things that were statistically significant. And we know by chance that about 1 in 20 of those variables will be significant by chance alone. So by requiring pre-registration of trials, it made it much more difficult to play those tricks. And as a result of that, as we track clinical trials since the required reporting in clinicaltrials.gov, it turns out the number of positive trials is decreasing. And so this level of sort of rigor and suspicion is being cranked up. And it is something that we have to think about. Again, suggesting that these cultures really have not merged yet. And something like the PPP, I think, would be a good opportunity for us to learn a little bit about how we're challenged in our own fields and how we're challenged by our own colleagues. I think the opportunities for this are terrific. I'll just mention one more cultural thing, and then I'll hang it up. But the other thing that I learned when I came to government, which was a big surprise to me, I've got to say that I had been at the University of California in San Diego, and then from there I went to UCLA. And in both places I was chair of departments that were big departments, and the departments were known for being multidisciplinary collaborative departments. So that in each case we made our name by being open to working with people with different backgrounds and different training traditions and so forth. And so I thought, collaboration is not so bad. We've achieved this in the past. One of the things I've learned in government is that even within the government agencies, so just the government components of the PPP, it's surprising that we do things so differently. So Wendy, for example, has been working very hard just on relationships between the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health, two sister organizations, in many ways very similar objectives. Well, one of the things I learned was, and we are moving forward with some things that we're doing together, but one of the things I learned early on is that the NIH has the very best peer review system in the world. And I learned shortly after that that the NSF also has the best peer review system in the world. And actually the VA has the best peer review system in the world. And then other agencies, actually the British Research Council has the best peer review system in the world. So one of the difficulties, that's right, and all the rest of you that have peer review systems, and one of the things that's challenging, which I hadn't realized, is for us to work together and for us to spend resources together, we actually have to come together on the way these peer review processes work. So, for example, our charter from Congress requires a two-level peer review process. The NSF actually has a different system. So they have just a one-level peer review process. The names of our reviewers at the NIH are public, and so you can go to a website and figure out the names of the review, names of members of the review committee. At NSF, that's not true. They do not publicly release the names of their reviewers. So in order for us to come together and do things, we have to merge, and we have to get these dinosaurs to mate with each other. And the foreplay can take years. So there are significant challenges to doing this. On the other hand, the benefits are very substantial, and I think that we all recognize that this is something that's worth getting to know each other over. I think that the opportunities to move this field forward are tremendous, but I think that it will take some time for us to get to know each other, to get to know what the hang-ups are within our organizations, what the hurdles will be. So that's my general comment.
Okay, thank you. So I think Bob's really nicely summed it up. And I told you we didn't need the whole time if we didn't need it. So, what? Sign-up sheet. So, if I'd had sense, I would have also left my email on the last slide too. But I really would like to hear from you. All of the steering committee PPP members would love to hear from you. We had the RFI. We have a lot of information from that. We have, again, you all have provided wonderful information today. And so I'm going to, we have these mini pads. This is going to be a lot of little sign-up sheets. Okay. Oh. Here. What? Oh, it has a listserv? Oh. Did it have something? Oh, there we are. Look at that. Okay, sorry. I was better than I knew. As we all know, the summit's a long time. So the mHealth PPP at mail.nih.gov. Please send an email. If you're interested, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, and I know you all have comments, thoughts, even those who didn't speak. If you spoke and you still want to say it again, I'd love to hear it. So, and I feel like I've learned a lot in just this session. But as Bob said, there's some uncertainty as we create a PPP, but the value far outweighs the difficulties and the risk of putting this together, and we all see that. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.